Hello, everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. Today, we're diving into a story that could change everything. What happens when James is told that the woman he loves might actually be his own sister? How do you choose between love and the truth? Stay with me as we uncover this emotional twist. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next video. The moment everything started to fall apart wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just one sentence, and it changed everything. James was standing in front of his father when the accusation came out of nowhere. Diep is my daughter. Just like that. No hesitation, no uncertainty. His father didn't say it like a theory. He said it like a fact. James froze. At first, he thought he misheard. What are you talking about? His father's expression didn't change. Before I married Ly Tu Diep, she was already pregnant. I've investigated this for a long time. This isn't something I'm guessing. The room felt smaller. James shook his head immediately. That's impossible. His mind started racing, trying to find logic, something solid to hold on to. Diep doesn't look like me. Silence. She doesn't look like you either. Still nothing from his father. And she's younger than me. That doesn't even make sense. The timeline doesn't add up. But his father didn't budge. Don't let love blind you. That sentence hit harder than anything else. James felt anger rising in his chest. Are you trying to break us up? Is that what this is? You've never approved of us. Is this just another way to separate me from her? His father's voice turned firm. If you don't believe me, then go do a DNA test. The words landed like a hammer. Test your blood. Test hers. Test mine. You'll see. James stared at him. I'm telling you, his father said slowly, you are both my children. And just like that, the world James knew tilted off its axis. After leaving that conversation, James couldn't breathe properly. His thoughts wouldn't line up. They kept crashing into each other. If this were true, why hadn't his father brought Diep home? Why had she lived a difficult life? Why now? None of it made sense. But what scared him more wasn't the logic. It was the possibility. What if it was true? He tried to shake it off, tried to convince himself it was manipulation, a tactic, a cruel strategy. But the word DNA test kept echoing in his head. For the first time in a long time, James felt afraid. Not of failure, not of business problems, not even of his father's anger. He was afraid of the truth. His mother noticed immediately. Me sees your face, she said gently. Something's wrong. James avoided her eyes. It's nothing, just work. She gave him a look that only mothers can give, the kind that says she already knows. This isn't work, she said quietly. This is about Diep, isn't it? James swallowed. He didn't know whether his father had already spoken to her. He didn't know how much she knew. There's something, he admitted. She waited. It's complicated. Is your father making things difficult again? She asked. Is he trying to interfere? James hesitated. Even saying it out loud felt dangerous. Bo said that Diep might be his daughter. The room went completely still. His mother didn't react immediately, but James could see the tension in her shoulders. He's been suspicious, James continued, about Ly Tu Diep being pregnant before marriage. He says he's investigated. He says he's sure. And you? She asked softly. I don't believe it. But even as he said it, his voice lacked conviction. He ran a hand through his hair. He told me to do a DNA test. That was the word again. DNA test. James laughed nervously. I've never been scared of anything before. I've lost money. I've faced failure. I've stood up to him. None of that scared me. He looked at her. But every time someone says, test, I feel like I can't breathe. His mother's expression softened. Maybe you should do it, she said carefully. James stared at her. You think it could be true? I don't think so, she replied quickly, But right now, you're living in fear of something you don't even know. She continued, steady and practical. Take your father's blood. Take Diep's blood. Do the test. If it's not true, then everything ends there. If it is... She didn't finish. James' voice dropped. If it is, what do I do? He looked broken now. What if the person I love most in this world suddenly becomes my sister? He asked, his voice shaking. How am I supposed to live with that? That was the real fear. Not shame, not scandal, loss. He hadn't told Diep anything yet. I can't tell her, he said. She wouldn't be able to handle this. Then don't, his mother replied gently. Not until you have the result. He looked at her with desperation. Please don't say anything. Don't let her know. I won't, she promised. I'll keep it between us. But the silence between them was heavy. After you get the result, she added, then you tell her. James shook his head. I can't. I'm not ready. He wasn't ready for confirmation. He wasn't ready for destruction. Days passed, but nothing felt normal. The word brother haunted him. He imagined sitting across from Diep at dinner and knowing she was his sister. He imagined having to step back. He imagined walking away. The fear paralyzed him. One evening, he finally admitted it. I don't have the courage, he told his mother. I don't. She looked at him carefully. You can't delay this forever. I'm trying, he said helplessly. But what if we do the test, Nick, and we're siblings? Then you accept it, she said, though her voice carried sadness. Maybe you two were never meant to be. The words felt cruel. Accept it? James repeated. If it's the truth, she said quietly, you let each other go. He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. I need time, he whispered. You can have a little, she replied, but not forever. He nodded slowly. I promise, he said, though he wasn't sure he could keep it. If it's true, I'll end it. His mother searched his face. I'll wait for your answer, she said. And just like that, the choice was no longer abstract. It was coming, whether he wanted it or not. But for now, Diep knew nothing. She laughed the same way. She spoke the same way. She trusted him the same way. And James carried the secret alone. The DNA test hadn't been done. There were no results. Just a question hanging in the air. A single answer that could destroy everything. And somewhere deep inside, James knew the storm was coming. The house felt normal. That was the strangest part. Diep moved around the kitchen like she always did, humming softly while preparing things for Tet. The air smelled faintly of sugar and coconut. Outside, everything looked calm. Inside James' chest, nothing was calm. He stood there watching her for a moment longer than usual, watching the way she smiled when she talked, watching how natural it felt to be around her, how easy. And all he could hear in the back of his mind was his father's voice. You are both my children. He clenched his jaw. Diep turned around and caught him staring. What? She laughed. Why are you looking at me like that? Nothing, he said quickly. Too quickly. Just thinking. About work again? He forced a small smile. Yeah, work. The lie felt heavy. She walked closer, brushing past him casually, unaware that the distance between them, invisible but real, was growing inside his head. If she knew, she would be shattered. If she knew that the man she loved was secretly wondering whether he was her brother. He couldn't even finish that thought. Later that night, after Diep had gone home, James sat alone. He replayed every memory. Their first conversation, their first argument, the way she had looked at him when she said she trusted him. What would that look turn into if she found out? Confusion? Disgust? Pain? His phone lit up. A message from Diep. Did you eat? Don't stay up too late. So simple. So normal. He stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Yeah, you too. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a split second, he almost typed everything out. Almost told her, but he deleted the thought. Not yet. He couldn't destroy her peace without certainty. The next day, his mother approached him again. "You can't avoid this forever," she said gently. James looked exhausted. "I know. Have you thought about what you'll do?" He nodded faintly. "If we don't do the test, this will eat me alive." "And if you do?" He exhaled slowly. "Then at least I'll know." His mother studied him. "Are you prepared for the worst?" James didn't answer immediately. The worst. The word felt too real. "If it's true," he said finally, voice low, "then I walk away." His mother's eyes softened. "That won't be easy." "I know. You love her." "I do. And you're willing to lose her?" He swallowed. "If she's my sister, then I already lost her." That sentence hung between them. There was no dramatic music, no shouting, just the quiet weight of reality settling in. Days stretched out. James went to work. He handled meetings. He signed documents. He made decisions. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, everything had. Every time he saw Diep laugh, the guilt stabbed him. Every time she held his hand, he felt fear. What if this was wrong? What if he was unknowingly crossing a line he didn't even know existed? The possibility made him pull away sometimes, just slightly. And she noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked one evening. "Yeah," he said automatically. "You've been distant." He shook his head. "Just tired." She stepped closer. "You can tell me anything, you know." The words nearly broke him. Anything. Except this. He nodded instead. "I know." But he didn't speak. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. He imagined two futures. In one, the test came back negative. They would laugh about how ridiculous the whole thing was. They would move forward stronger than ever. In the other, the result would confirm everything his father claimed. He would have to sit across from Diep and tell her that their love was built on a misunderstanding. Tell her they had to stop. Tell her that the person she trusted most had been hiding the truth. He turned over, unable to breathe properly. He had faced business collapses. He had faced public criticism. He had faced his father's anger. But this was different, because this wasn't about pride. It was about losing the person he loved. The tension became unbearable. Finally, one evening, he went back to his mother. "I can't keep living like this," he said. She looked at him quietly. "Then stop. I'm terrified." "I know. What if it destroys everything?" She reached out and held his hand. "Living in uncertainty is already destroying you." He closed his eyes. "You're right." There was no dramatic decision, no grand speech, just a tired man realizing he had no choice. "We'll do the test," he said finally. His mother nodded slowly. "And until then," she reminded him, "Diep doesn't know." He nodded. "I won't tell her, not without the result." Because telling her without proof would only cause pain, but hiding it felt like betrayal. Either way, someone was going to get hurt. The days leading up to the test felt unreal. James found himself memorizing small details about Diep, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she frowned when she concentrated, the warmth of her hand in his, as if he were preparing himself for the possibility that those moments would become memories instead of habits. She noticed his intensity. "Why are you being so sentimental?" she teased. He forced a smile. "Can't I? You're acting like something's ending." He looked at her carefully. Maybe something was. But he didn't say it. Instead, he pulled her into a hug. She melted into it, unaware of the storm hovering over them. Somewhere else, his father remained confident, certain, waiting. And James understood one terrifying truth. Once the result came back, there would be no going back. No pretending, no delaying, no second chances. For now, Diep still laughed freely. For now, she still believed in their future. For now, their love still existed untouched, but it was hanging by a thread. A single test result away from collapse. James lay awake that night knowing one thing. Whatever the outcome, the next chapter of his life would begin with loss. Either he would lose his fear, or he would lose her. And until the truth arrived, their love remained suspended, fragile, uncertain, and one answer away from breaking forever. James' world is shaken when his father claims that Diep, the woman he loves, may actually be his biological daughter. What starts as an accusation quickly turns into a terrifying possibility, forcing James to confront a truth he never imagined. His father insists on a DNA test, convinced of his suspicion, while James struggles between denial and fear. Unable to face Diep with such uncertainty, he confides in his mother, who urges him to seek clarity before the doubt destroys him. As he wrestles with the decision, the weight of secrecy grows heavier, and every moment with Diep feels fragile. Their love, once secure and hopeful, now hangs by a single unanswered question. If the test confirms the worst, James knows he must walk away. Until the truth is revealed, their relationship remains suspended in painful uncertainty.